Hello viewer, the Nameless Scholar here, and welcome back to more Age of Sigmar lore. In this video, I will be talking about the Lizardmen. Before I begin, if you want more Age of Sigmar lore videos, check out my channel and other videos. I would be grateful if you liked, commented, and subscribed as well as shared this video. My purpose is to prove that Age of Sigmar is more than just the game that killed Warhammer Fantasy. Before we begin, what is a Lizardman? A Lizardman can vary. There are 4 types of Lizardmen, which are at least sapient, that make up the Seraphon species. Despite their differences, they have few things in common. All Seraphon are genderless. They don't reproduce. Instead, they are birthed from spawning pools with everything they need to know regarding their purpose in life. The 4 species of Seraphon are skinks, which are small reptiles, who are the merchants, artisans, and the clergy. The Saurus, who are the warrior caste. The Kroxigors, crocodile-like creatures, whom are not only warriors but also laborers. And the Slann, whom are amphibians that are the leaders of the Seraphon. The true origins of the Lizardmen are hazy, and in some cases outright forbidden. For it is known that they escaped the destruction of the world that was on their temple ships, and they escaped to the etheric void, as not even the Seraphon remember their origins in detail. Even the Slann, who know exactly what happened, but refuse to talk about it to anyone. The reason for this, that this is a great source of shame for them. For the longest time, the Slann thought that the great plan had failed and hope had been lost. Chaos had destroyed the world. The Great Plan is a concept in Seraphon society where it is the plan of the Old Ones to bring perfect order to existence, free from the taint of chaos. However, the Old Ones are long gone, with the Slann and their servants erasing the memories of their servants and themselves of the very first reality-shattering war against the forces of chaos. Every Slann tries to enact the Great Plan as they remember it. The maps of the Cosmos Arcane they possess, however, are incomplete at best and outright misaligned at worst. As their void ships drifted in the etheric void, Doctrine found the fleet. The Slann telepathically communicated with the god beast because they were running out of arcane energy and the Seraphon were dying out. The Doctrine lamented the destruction of the world that was when the Slann explained that the ruinous powers had won. According to some lunar fraternities in Hyash, in ancient days, argent-hued comets were sighted when this happened. When they realized that they were not alone, that they had realized that the Great Plan did not fail, it was only set back. The Slann followed the tears of the Dracothian and reached the Peak of Azir and refueled their craft with heaven magic. However, the details are very murky. It is unknown if the Lizardmen stayed in stasis for eons before this recharging and lived, or if they died and when their dead bodies were filled with Azirite energy, and the divine essence of Dracothian and the Skink priests can never agree on the specific details. With this, and the discovery of the mortal realms, the Slann had concluded that the Great Plan had not failed, at least most of them. And it continues. What happened during the world that was only a setback. However, there's another interpretation. The great Drake Dracothian stole fire from the Serpent Star, a blood-red orb that is older than time itself, and it created the Seraphon. This is why the Starborn were the first Seraphon encountered in the mortal realms, and as of recent times, the coalesced Seraphon have also appeared. What really drew the Seraphon to the spotlight was during the era of the Beast, where the spawning pools of Azir and that of the Coalesce grew amber with beast magic. Saurus and Kroxigor found their aggression heightened. New war beasts emerged from the pools, and no Slann had foreseen the return of Kragnos, the ender of empires. The Rite of Life had revitalized them from the damage they had sustained all those eons drifting in the void. Now all across the mortal realms are these impenetrable jungles filled with deadly reptilian creatures. In Sigmarite societies, the Soulblight courts and Greenskin camps, it is said that these jungles house within them temple cities with enough treasure to fill the vault of an entire kingdom, where these reptilians hoard gems, gold, and other shiny metals that the Warmbloods used to trade money with. These are called temple cities. Temple cities, in the best case scenario, are founded onto places that are chosen with great care by the Slann, preferably positioned atop a crucial node in the Astra Matrix, to both better protect them and more efficiently terraform and construct other structures. Some might even settle near the ruins of an old one ruins. Some will settle on vital choke points to fight the force of chaos. In the worst case scenario, crash land to somewhere in a mortal realm. Whatever happens, the vast portion of a temple city is buried beneath the earth upon landing, where the Slann use spatial manipulation to move the secret walls and spawning pools down underground and hollow out subterranean caverns that will become the streets of the temple city. After a city is founded, the terraforming process begins. Ziggurats, known as Realm Shaper engines, detach from the cities and land on the ground. Then the engine, using magical ley lines, quickly transforms the surrounding area into an impossibly dense jungle full of poisonous flora and dangerous fauna. The reason for this is that the Lizardmen are cold-blooded creatures. Not only that, it is said that they are recreating their home in the world that was. The Realm Shaper engines also purge any corruption within the land itself, and the appearances and the nature of these rainforests change depending on which mortal realm they are on. The jungles in Chamon are known for their copper-barked trees and seeping oil swamps. The jungles in Ulgu, on the other hand, have their borders constantly shifting. Those in Gur are defined by aggression and so on. The size of a temple city can vary. It can be small or it can be large, filled with solar basking pools, observatories, forges, and of course, the pyramids where the Seraphon offer sacrifices to their creators to divine the next part of the Great Plan. From one temple city, expeditions are sent and they found smaller outposts for the temple city like a Dawnbringer crusade. Sometimes their Voidcraft must settle multiple locations, and when this is the case, their spaceship can actually split itself into smaller vessels. Now, aside from appearances, the difference between Starborn and Coalesced is that the Starborn have no concept of beauty and art, only order and the continuation of the Great Plan. The Coalesced, however, do, as the Skinks compete with one another to create masterpieces in the name of their old ones and their Slann overlords, and they use the most precious of metals and hoard them to do so. This is why the Warmbloods seek to plunder their treasure. To prevent them from raiding the main cities, the Seraphon oftentimes just put stuff in an isolated vault surrounded by hostile fauna and flora, because as artistic as they are, personal wealth means little to them. Should the Warmbloods still retain their greed after taking this treasure, the Coalesced war hosts will put them in their place. The Starborn don't have this issue. Not only that, the Starborn are still in their void vessels. Since their disappearance eons ago, the Old Ones have finally been deified as gods by the Lizardmen, the most famous of them being Sotek, the Deliverer, Quetzal, the Preserver, Tepok, the Seer, Itzil, the Tamer, Chotek, the Invigorator, and Huanchi, the Predator. The first major god of the Lizardmen Pantheon, we could say, is Sotek. He is, funnily enough, not considered to be an old one. He is the embodiment of the soul of the Seraphon species. Now, the followers of Sotek are highly sacrificial. particularly against the Skaven, mind you. For the Great Horned Rat is the ancient enemy of the Serpent God. It is why they like to sacrifice the Ratman on a massive scale and provide their hearts to Sotek. Then there is Quetzal, who is the god of protection. Those whom are born under his sigil at the spawning pools are known to have much denser muscle mass and bony protrusions. Quetzal is both a god of guardianship and warding. His sigils can be found on Seraphon shields and on temples filled with things that the Lizardmen don't want the Warmbloods to actually plunder from them. Quetzal has a brother by the name of Quetli, who is a keeper of future paths. However, some insist that Quetli is a mistranslation of Quetzal, and this has caused schisms, most famous being the Roaring Corona and Quetli's Mantle Constellations, whom have come to blows over it. Then there is Tepok the Seer. He is blind to all but to the winds of magic. He is the patron god of the Skink Scribes and Starseers. He is depicted as a quaddle flying feathered breed of serpents that has a natural affinity for magic. Then there is Itzel the Tamer, which is the god of the Saurus and the Seraphon War Beasts, whom is especially revered in Gur. There is Chotek, who is the most important deity of all, the god of the sun, who brings the dawn onto the mortal realms, most often worshipped in Haish as well as Akshi. In the case of the latter, those who are at Akshi are master manipulators of fire, and associate Chotek with fire as well. And essentially, there is also Huan Chi, which is the most secretive of the Old Ones, who manifests itself as a black panther with a pelt made of shadow. It is the supreme hunter, which is why the chameleon skinks worship him above all the others. Now, each Seraphon are a part of a constellation which is either a starborn or coalesced. The starborn are forever in their spacecraft, darting from one mortal realm to another. Meanwhile, the coalesced have settled to a mortal realm, whether by choice or not. Because of this, all constellations initially hail from Azir. When they coalesce, they adapt to the environment they are in. At the head of every constellation is a Slann Starmaster. Usually. And it is rare to have more than one Slann ruling a constellation, for reasons I will talk about later. When there are more than one Slann, it is the Starmaster who determines where their spaceship will go, or if they will coalesce, etc. Beneath the Slann are two different castes, the Saurus, who are tasked with protecting the temples, with their Old Bloods and Scar Veterans acting as what we could compare to a colonel and lieutenant, for lack of better words. The second caste is the Skink priesthood, which helps scry the future as well as lead the religious and the bureaucratic administrations of the Seraphon. The coalesced feature more Saurus lords, while the Starborn sport more skinks, but only in extreme circumstances is one more dominant than the other. A pack of Seraphon which emerges from a spawning pool is known as a cohort, defined by their telepathic bonds with one another as well as the patterns on their scales. When multiple cohorts fight together, it is called a host. A star host is a starborn host, while a temple host is a coalesced host. Although the two have mostly similar ways of fighting, the biggest difference is this. The Starborn are filled with Azerite energy and are more like the Stormcast Eternals, with weapons that crackle with the energy of the heavens, while their sorcerers masters manipulate space-time. The Coalesced, however, use their intimate knowledge of the jungle to ambush their enemies and tear them apart like animals, while bringing the entirety of Jurassic Park with them. Now, let's talk about the major constellations, starting with the biggest Starborn constellation, the Dracoffian's Tail. They are clinical and are the best argument as to why the Seraphon are not truly the Lizardmen of the world that was. They do not seek contact with the Warmbloods, nor do they want any territories. They simply descend upon the battlefield, annihilate any who are unfortunates of the enemy, refuse to elaborate, and leave. The Dracoffian's Tail is one of the few constellations that has multiple Slanns and they can manipulate space-time to allow their star hosts to travel vast distances in the blink of an eye. The reason for this clinical detachment is that they want to complete the Great Plan, and the death of the world that was nothing but a setback in the cosmic scale of things. The constellation is named after the titular creature they believe to be the prime speaker of the Old One's will. They take advice from the Star Drake spawn and follow sentient star clusters sacred to the God Beast. Then the Fangs of Sotek are next. They are the hands of the titular god, as they descend from the stars to strike at their enemies. A majority of the star hosts comprise of skinks. They use poison darts and use hit and run tactics. If there's a skink embassy in a free city, it is most likely of the Fangs of Sotek, as they have been observed to clear the locations of Warmblood settlements. They see the Warmbloods as a means to an end, a clay that can be molded into weapons that they can use to defeat their ancient enemy, while they control the strings as they find humans to be most gullible. Aside from pulling the strings, they also, without their knowledge and or consent of course, help the Order of Azir track down and kill heretics. They blame the Daughters of Cain for it, but nothing ever happens because there simply isn't enough evidence. Then there is Quaddle's Claw, whom are the first Coalesced, where their ship, the Eye of Chotek, crash-landed onto Gur during the Age of Chaos. Their Void ship was attacked by the Skaven.
Of course!
And thus, the Temple ship crash-landed. Then the Slann Starmaster Quex of Quaddle's Claw died to a Skaven plague, and ever since, the Saurus Old Blood Gar has taken control. The interesting thing about Quaddle's Claw is that they believe the Great Plan has failed, or at least subverted centuries ago. Centuries probably means either the destruction of the world that was, or the death of Quex. If the Great Plan of the Old Ones was subverted, it might as well have failed, so instead they focus on survival. They worship Itzel above the other gods, and it is said that because their spawning pools consumed immense amounts of amber magic, Quaddle's Claw was able to hatch Agrodons before any other, and they have more Saurus and Kroxigors than Skinks. Then there is the Thunder Lizard Constellation, whom are coalesced that especially like to bring the entirety of Jurassic Park against their enemies. Unlike Quaddle's Claw, they descended at the zenith of the Age of Chaos willingly. They are highly orthodox, and their Star Master, Zezitek, fanatically maintains that the oracular thought engines preserved within his temples speak with the voice of the Old Ones, and their quest is to recover the treasures of crashed Seraphon warships. For a long while, they have been warring against the Ossiarch Bone Reapers of the Null Myriad. The Right of Life essentially angered Tezitek because it wasn't a part of the Great Plan, as the Thunder Lizards fought against the Ender of Empires, and even Alaria's children by burning them alive with the magic of Chotek, because, well, again, the Right of Life was not a part of the Great Plan. Now, onto the units. There are the Slann, which are amphibians who are at most as old as the world that was. They are one of the strongest magic casters in the entire setting, even stronger than vampires and greater demons, as they can bend space-time with a thought, engulf entire enemy regiments in a ball of fire and more. They are so powerful that a non-lizard man trying to communicate with them is likely to have their brain explode on the spot. They were created by the Old Ones to lead the Lizardmen. However, the Slann are rare and an endangered group of Seraphon, as no new Slann has ever come out of the spawning pools even before the destruction of the world that was, which is why they are heavily guarded by their Saurus Temple Guard. They are typically located at the observatories of their ziggurats, tapping into the astromatrix to look into the future or interpret the next part of the Great Plan. So every Slann has their own interpretation of the Great Plan based on what they remember. So the Great Plan can range from aiding the Warmbloods against chaos to the genocide of everything and anything that isn't them. When they go to battle, they sit atop giant mobility chairs that float in the air. I know it's a plankin, but funnier to say a mobility chair, granting them to their subordinates annihilation to their enemies. The Slann aside, there are the Spawn Lords which command the hosts of the Seraphon onto the battlefield, such as the Old Bloods, whom are at the top of the Saurus hierarchy. They have no desire for glory or grudges to settle. Their hatred is reserved against anything who defies the will of their creators. Like an orc, the more a Saurus survives battles, the more it will grow in size, and its scales will become as hard as Gromril, and their claws sharp enough to shred Grunta flesh. They will start uncovering knowledge of tactics and will have an increased sense of command. It is said that Tlangsa, the god of war, gifted Saurus the knowledge of tactics, but receiving a vast sum of experience like that proved too much for the creatures, so instead they embedded the knowledge in their souls, slowly unveiling as they gain experience. The Saurus Old Bloods are capable of speech, just like any other Saurus, but they prefer simple commands such as fight, kill, etc. They much prefer body language. Raising one's head to expose the neck means defense, while raising it to 1 centimeter higher means challenge. Disputes between two Old Bloods are resolved via ritual combat, and sometimes it can lead to death. The Old Bloods have access to the vast repository of weapons that are held in the vaults of the Old Ones, but they have no idea how to use them. So they prefer things like spears that crackle with azerite energy, and gauntlets that hurl cosmic fire. However, some mount reptiles called carnosaurs. They are over 30 feet tall, and they have a jaw that is wide enough to swallow man whole, and also strong enough to rip the head off a gargant. They have limbs that can tackle any opponent, and an infamous bloodlust, accompanying a blood-freezing roar. Then there are the Scar Veterans, which are lieutenants. Many fight atop agrodons or carnosaurs. Take everything I told you about the Old Bloods and add most of it to them. Then there are the Astrolith Bearers, which are less standards and more arcane mechanisms that grant boons to allies. They are serpentine-shaped totems lined with starglyphs. These astroliths will dispel enemy spells, heal nearby Seraphon, and grant them strength. How they exactly function is unknown, as they do the things they do randomly. The Seraphon believe that the unknown cause is proof the Old Ones still exist somewhere out in the world. Well, the following I have listed are the exceptions, as most Saurus are actually foot soldiers and the main warrior caste of the Lizardmen. They are 7 to 8 feet tall with fierce jaws, a tail that can kill a man with sufficient force, and a singular desire to eradicate the enemies of the Old Ones. Starborn Saurus warriors will either continue training or will be held in biostasis until the next battle, while the Coalesced Saurus will roam the jungles around the Temple City to hunt and or kill any trespasser. There are also the Saurus Guard, which are a protective caste, which means a Saurus doesn't become a Saurus Guard, they are born into it. They guard not just the Starmaster, but also the Ziggurats, the vaults and the shrines. They are not to be trifled with, as it is said that they have no fear, have scales as hard as Gromril, and armed with celestial halberds. Then there are the Agrodon Lancers, which are Saurus that mount Agrodons. What makes both the riders and the mounts terrifying is that, unlike the mortals, these are good at both at the charge and the melee afterwards. While the riders impale their enemies with lances, the Agrodons bite and claw at their foes, and increasing in bloodlust. They became a thing when Kragnos escaped and their eggs started hatching. It is said by the Skink priesthood that Itzil was enraged by Kragnos' escape, and the Agrodons are his divine anger, for it is also said that the Ender of Empire slew many lizardmen long ago. Just like any other Saurus, one is born an Agrodon Lancer, not made. They have bone crests that mark them as Itzil's chosen, and only then can mount an Agrodon, as these things will attack even an old blood. The Skinks of a constellation oftentimes petition Agrodon Lancers to put feathers of Howler Vultures onto them, so when they charge, not only will the enemy hear a terrifying shriek, but it also acts as a signal for the Seraphon that the Agrodon are approaching. Speaking of Skinks, Skink Starseers are the apex of the priesthood. They are favorites of the Starmasters and help decipher prophecies and act as advisors. They are better at foreseeing the future, even if they can unleash devastating magic upon the battlefield. Although they do fight, the Skink are not really warriors. They are the merchant caste of the Lizardmen, the bureaucrats, priesthood, artisans, etc. They are the most common and numerous Lizardmen too. They ensure that Seraphon society runs smoothly. They also have their own mobility chairs, the Starseers, for 3 reasons. 1 is extra protection. 2, some presume the Starseers are the actual leaders of the Seraphon. And the Slann essentially see this as a good thing. And 3, the mobility chairs react well with the winds of magic. Then there are the Skink Star Priests, which, like many Lizardmen, are born, not made. Sometimes a spawning pool will use its energy to spawn a single skink. These are invariably skilled with magic and are the ones who oversee the embassies in the Warmblood cities. Aside from that, whereas a Starseer is essentially a high priest, a Star Priest is a battle mage. Then there are the Oracles, which are the Starmasters make sure that the spawning pools spawn one of them whenever they have a need for it. They are strange and even more aloof than the Starborn. They only speak when their golden mask's eyes start glowing with Azerite energy, and other skinks write down every word it says. Their purpose is to investigate disturbances within the Astromatrix and dispel enemy spells. They also have a distinctive twin-pronged tail. This physical aberration is considered a sign of Azerite power, as it is reminiscent of the forked tongues sported by both Sotek and Dracothian. There are finally the Skink Chiefs, who are essentially mainly martial leaders and not, say, priests or mages. Now, the Skink Foot Soldiers sport beast-scale shields, javelins, and poisonous blow darts. They are not really that impressive compared to their bigger Saurus siblings. However, there's this very specific type of skink called the Chameleon Skinks. They can camouflage, like their name suggests, and use poisonous blow darts that will break the mind of the victim with celestial hallucinations. They also take the role of assassins. Then there are the Raptidon Hunters and Chargers. The Raptidon Hunters are skinks that hurl javelins at their enemies, while the Chargers are traditional cavalry where they have lances. Raptidons are agile creatures that are sacred to Tepok, and like Raptidons, their eggs did not hatch until the era of the beast. Raptidons are highly intelligent, so intelligent that they might as well be as smart as the skinks who ride them. They possess their own clicking language, but on the hunt they are silent and communicate via the feathers on their spines that can change color. They can dig basic pitfalls and slip through smelling foliage to mask their scents. They also have powerful back legs to pounce that end with sharp talons. There are the Pterodon Riders, which are essentially pterodactyls that the skinks ride, and as they fly through the sky like a free bird, they throw javelins and bolas at their enemies. These pterodons also bombard their enemies with meteorites that have been carved with Azerite symbols that will make any war machine it comes into contact with explode. There are also the Ripidactyl Raiders, who swarm their enemy and tear them apart with their jaws and claws, while the Skink Riders will jab their enemies with their spears. But there are also one final species of Seraphon that is sapient: Kroxigors. These crocodile-like giants are, I wouldn't say strictly the worker caste, but rather the manual labor caste. They are not very intelligent and almost always need the aid of skinks when doing manual labor or battle. However, their lack of intellect is made up by the fact that they have strength on par with an ogre, and their jaws are strong enough to snap the helmet of a Chaos Warrior. In battle, they take up spiked clubs and maces. Their leaders are called Warspawned, whereas during times of peace, the Kroxigors are manual laborers, but the Warspawn exist only for combat. They are able to swing their weapons far faster than an average Kroxigor should be able to. Skinks who are with Warspawn take pride in aiding such a holy creature, and should their Skink caretaker die, they will enter into a frenzy that will leave nothing but a fleshy pink warm pulp, and by some great tragedy, all of the Skinks of a constellation are slain. They will enter into stasis for decades until either a Skink bonds with it, or explorers find it covered in a moss and foliage mess. Then it wakes up and kills them, and then enters into stasis again. The war hosts of the Seraphon also comprise of giant reptiles that they ride to war, such as a Stegodon. These scaled bulwarks topple trees and make the ground shake as they charge, and once the Stegodon impacts its foes, it either eats them with its maws, tramples them, or turns them into pink jelly with its spike tail. Usually, Skinks ride these creatures, and among the giant reptiles, the Stegodons are the more tame ones. Even when they possess an omnivorous diet, they help Skinks build stuff alongside the Kroxigors. In battle, Skink throws javelins and arrows that are made out of celestite. Then there are the engines of the gods, which only the oldest Stegodons are allowed to carry. These are invaluable, and only a Slann can remove them from the back of a Stegodon, as how they are produced is lost to time, and so they are used as weapons of last resort due to how devastating they are. Then there are the spawns of Chotek, which are salamanders. Some Wormbloods, especially the Fiery Slayers, think that the spawns of Chotek are the close cousins of Vulcatrix, the mother of salamanders. When these giant salamanders hatch, unique Skinks called the Sun Acolytes hatch with them, which are tasked with taking care of it and ride it to battle. Finally, there are the Bastiladons, which have so thick scales that they are walking bulwarks. They carry artifacts of great power for the Seraphon, solar engines which unleash a beam of death against their enemies, or arcs of Sotek, which open portals that lead straight into the serpent pits of Seraphon temples. Anyways, guys, this is going to be it for this video. Sorry it took way too long to publish this video, but I'm very much alive. It's just, I have this one exam I'm studying too, and that just made the process of recording these videos just stop to a crawl, if you get what I mean. I'm the Nameless Scholar, and yeah. I hope to see you again soon. I will keep posting AOS videos, so don't worry.